How does the image of Captain America, Thor and Iron Man change throughout the MCU? To answer this question is to examine the evolution of Marvel Studios' confidence in constructing symbolic dialogues between genres, themes and characters. Therefore, this research will take a semiotic approach, which is the study of symbols, because every connotative meaning that we receive draws upon a set of established cultural values. Every symbol are very much a collection of ideas that are constantly at play in culture. And yeah, you know. As Roland Barthes argued, there are three levels to semiotics. There's denotation, which is simply what you see. Captain America is a man dressed in a military uniform, coloured red, white and blue. Thor is a blonde man with a hammer and a red cape. And Iron Man is a man in a red and gold metal suit. But then there are the connotations, which is what we associate with it. Steve symbolises patriotism and respect. Thor signifies royalty and fantasy, while Tony connotes wealth and intelligence. All three shares an identity related to strength and power, but they're also divided by radically different myths and ideologies, which is the third level. Captain America is related to the mythologized memories of World War II, Thor is related to a cultural nostalgia towards pre-modern feudalism, and Iron Man is related to the dream of
genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
There are these chains of concepts that are widely accepted, that are inferred. Therefore, semiotics will allow an opportunity to examine the different cultural codes that appear when you simply place all three in a scene. The first meeting of Captain America, Thor and Iron Man can be broken down into 8 shots. Figure 1 features Thor and Iron Man fighting, which is intervened by Captain America, who stands above them in Figure 2, in a low-angle shot symbolizing his commanding presence and idiosyncratic talent in having a clearer, broader perspective. He then jumps down in Figure 3 and 4, where he shares the same equal level of perspective with everyone else. This is a non-verbal signal that gives Thor an opportunity to calm down and join him without being embarrassed.
I've come here to put an end to Loki's schemes.
And prove it. Put that hammer down. Yeah, no.
But then Iron Man ruins this, which causes him to be hit in Figure 5 and pushes Thor to move in on Cap in Figure 6. But then the explosion causes everyone to become victims of Captain America's shield, to the extent that in Figure 7, we now have a high-angle shot that disempowers everyone. But within this image, Captain America's shield is the shiniest and most prominent object in the darkness, symbolically vindicating him. The final figure features the three of them standing together. There's a noticeable distance between Thor from Captain America and Iron Man, he's even slightly taller. As a result, within the construction of this first meeting, a logic has been developed. Captain America is the glue that holds the Trinity together, Tony is a wild card who tests it, and Thor is the very thing that needs to be glued on.
Are we done here?
In Age of Ultron, the most prominent sequence that features the three of them are when they depart the New Avengers compound. Tony retires, Steve affirms his life purpose as a soldier, and Thor leaves Earth. The 8 shots featured here often places Thor as the central figure. In Figure 1, he's right at the middle of the frame. In Figure 2, his shoulder and presence towers over Steve as he jokes.
But if you put the hammer in an elevator, it would still go up.
And in Figure 3, he towers over Tony even more significantly. But as they begin to walk more prominently, Steve becomes closer and more actually prominent himself to the frame. But Thor is still dead center. Figure 5 democratizes the on-screen presence by featuring the camera panning down to the three of them, where they're almost all the same size. Consequently, Figure 4 and 5 collectively presents a peaceful relationship between power and humility. All three characters stand as the most vibrant figures within an almost all-white background, but then they're contrasted by the large scale of the buildings and the people who even stands above them. They are both big and small at the same time. Then in figure 6, they stand together, the colour of grass and the shine from the world around them is more prominent, and begins to make these three figures more symbolically involved with the rest of the image. In figure 7, Thor then teleports out through the Bifrost and leaving Tony and Steve on a high angle shot. The underpinning theme here is the idea of home. As friends, they're all humbled by their landscape and they all identify as protectors and subjects at the same time to this world.
You think you can find out what's coming?
I do. Besides this one, there's nothing that can't be explained.
But it also highlights Thor as an otherworldly presence that looms over everyone else. In Avengers Endgame, rather than a meeting of two worlds or a peaceful departure, the sequence is about the convergence of everything. This is the setup for the final showdown with Thanos. In figure 1, Thor is once again a primary subject. He stands within the wreckage looking into the field of debris as Iron Man joins him. In figure 2, we see everyone directly center of the frame, but they're small. This isn't a low-angle shot, therefore they're not powerless, but there is something more powerful that overwhelms their presence. In figure 3, it's revealed to be Thanos, who sits casually in the darkness with his blade. He's small in the frame too, therefore he doesn't overpower them, he competes with them symbolically. Thanos is also wearing gold, which allows him to be a form of light within the darkness, but it's a rather dim one. This is contrasted heavily in figure 4, where we have a distant long shot that establishes the scale of the location. But Captain America, Thor and Iron Man are brightly spotlighted by the sky. Thanos presents himself as hope, but in reality, it's a false sense of grandiosity that is easily overshadowed by real light that is not chosen by the self, but by the environment. Within figure 5, all three of the Trinity are present, but for the first time Captain America is at the center, and Thor is instead the one closest to the frame. Steve was established as the glue that kept everyone together, and now he's at the middle of the frame. The bond is very much unquestioned. But Thor is still deeply the subject to the story, and in figure 6, this is spotlighted by him calling upon the power of thunder as the weather changes. Even though he is the smallest in the frame, he commands the landscape that everyone is subject to. Thor then morphs as he lights up the screen, further contrasting the visual of light and darkness with Thanos even more heavily now. And in figure 7, we have the first dedicated close-up with Thor initiating the intention to fight.
Let's kill him properly this time.
The final shot before they split up are them walking towards Thanos as big figures looming. The shield, the repulsor ray, and the cape are the main iconographies of this image.
You could not live with your own failure.
Iron Man is often in the periphery in all of these, which is a necessity because his character arc is built on his anxiety with the size of his world.
Tony! Tony!
Which is why when he snaps, it's particularly exhilarating. Tony isn't as dependent on commanding visual power, so when he does, it's like firing a loaded gun.
Iron Man.
Captain America is presented through as an unspoken figure of respect. The composition always reminds the audience of his presence by making him consistently big, often even rivaling Thor. But the key pattern in all three sequences is how everything pivots around the presence of Thor.
You want me to put the hammer down?
He's a figure of immense power in Avengers 1, he's completely at the center in Age of Ultron, and in Endgame the image of the sky is, in fact, an extension of his own character. As a result, drawing back on Roland Barthes's level of signification, the connotations of every sequence not only draws mostly upon Thor's collection of myths and ideologies, but it gradually becomes more explicit. Every time we see the Trinity, the image of the three begins to become more and more dramatically romantic and abstract. They lean more towards fantasy than science fiction, even though 2/3 of the characters should say otherwise. How does the image of Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man change throughout the MCU? Well, these sequences shows that it becomes less about conveying a shared sense of realism and more about increasing the stylized nature of the genre. Everything is less motivated about proving the world can be small enough for them to aesthetically share it, and more about inferring an even bigger one.
What do you think is coursing through my veins right now?
Cheese whiz?